Hello and welcome back to Dream Room. If you remember only one thing today, remember this. September is not the month to make every plant look perfectly tidy. One wrong cut now can quietly remove the flowers you were hoping to see next spring. That matters whether you have a large backyard or just a narrow garden beside the house. Maybe your entire outdoor space is a 6 by 8 foot patio, a rented deck, a balcony with containers, or one small flower bed outside your home office window. And if you are over 60, you probably do not want another gardening job that means dragging out ladders, heavy tools, or spending an entire weekend bent over a border. You do not need to. For most of what we are doing today, you need only a sharp pair of bypass pruners, comfortable gloves, a small bucket, and perhaps a chair nearby so you can work in short, easy sessions. But timing matters. By September, many shrubs and perennials are already preparing for next year. Some are storing energy underground. Others are forming flower buds on stems that look completely ordinary right now. That faded hydrangea beside your porch? It may already be carrying next summer's flowers. That lavender spilling over the edge of your walkway? It can benefit from a trim, but cut 2 inches too deep into bare old wood, and that section may never fill out again. And that clematis tangled around your trellis? Depending on when it flowers, September pruning could either help it or remove an entire season of blooms. So before you make any cut, use this simple 3-question test. Is the stem dead, damaged, or diseased? Does the plant flower on old wood or new growth? And how close are you to your first frost? If cold weather may arrive in roughly 6 weeks, stop thinking about major reshaping. From this point forward, we are editing the garden, not rebuilding it. That is especially useful for those of us who prefer simple, natural spaces. Lavender beside a sitting area, climbing roses on a reclaimed wood trellis, hydrangeas near a small patio, or perennial flowers surrounding a quiet reading corner. Today, I'll show you 7 plants that deserve attention before September slips away. Exactly what to remove and, more importantly, where your pruners should stop. We're starting with the plant responsible for more disappointed gardeners next summer than almost any other. The hydrangea. If practical, low-effort ideas for making your home and garden more beautiful sound like your kind of thing, subscribe to Dream Room. These seasonal jobs are much easier when you know about them before the window closes. 1. Hydrangeas, the September mistake that can erase next summer's flowers. Hydrangeas come first for one simple reason. This is the plant where a neat-looking September cleanup can cost you an entire season of flowers. If you grow the classic blue, pink, or purple mophead hydrangeas near a porch, patio, fence, or small garden path, resist the urge to shorten every stem just because the shrub looks oversized. Many mophead, lacecap, and oakleaf hydrangeas bloom on old wood. By late summer and early fall, the stems standing in front of you may already be forming the buds that will open next year. Cut those stems back now, and you may be cutting off next June before it even arrives. So keep the job simple. First, remove anything clearly dead, broken, or diseased. Then look at the faded flower heads. If you want a tidier appearance, follow each old bloom down the stem until you reach the first strong pair of healthy buds. Make your cut just above that pair. Usually, you are removing only a few inches. That is enough. Do not keep cutting lower because the shrub still looks large. If one healthy branch is leaning into a narrow walkway, catching your sleeve every morning, or crowding a chair on a small patio, try a temporary solution instead. Use a soft plant tie to pull it gently toward the center or attach it loosely to a discreet support. You can solve the space problem without sacrificing next year's flowers. Now, panicle hydrangeas and smooth hydrangeas are different. Varieties such as limelight or Annabelle flower on new growth, so they are more forgiving. Even then, I would not use September for heavy reshaping. Save major structural pruning for late winter or very early spring, when the framework is easy to see and the plant has a full growing season to recover. And here is the September task that often matters more than pruning. Water. Hydrangeas have shallow roots and large leaves. A plant beside a warm brick wall, concrete patio, or sunny driveway can dry surprisingly fast. During hot, dry weather, give it a deep morning soak once or twice a week rather than a quick daily sprinkle. For container hydrangeas, check even more often. A pot can dry out far faster than garden soil. Add 2 to 3 inches of mulch around the root zone, but keep it slightly away from the stems. Your goal is not to force new growth now. Your goal is to protect the buds already being prepared. With hydrangeas in September, restraint is not neglect. It is planning ahead. Though, lavender. Shape it now, but never chase. Green growth into old wood. Lavender is one of the easiest plants to damage with good intentions. By September, many plants have finished their main flush of flowers. The faded stems are standing above the foliage, the mound may look loose, and the natural instinct is to cut it back hard and make it compact again. That is where trouble begins. Lavender has 2 very different types of growth. On the outside, you have soft, leafy green stems. Deeper inside, especially near the base, you will find hard gray or brown woody stems with very little foliage. Your September cut should stay in the green zone. Once the flower spikes have faded, remove the spent stems and lightly shape the plant into a soft, rounded mound. Take off roughly 1/3 of the leafy growth at most. Then stop. Always leave plenty of green foliage below every cut. If you cut deeply into bare old wood, that section may not produce fresh shoots again. Instead of creating a younger-looking plant, you can leave a permanent hole in the middle. This matters even more when lavender is growing beside a narrow path, around a small patio, or in containers where every uneven section is easy to notice. A rounded shape also has a practical purpose. During fall and winter, rain can settle in the open center of a sprawling lavender plant. A compact dome helps water move away from the crown instead of collecting around it. For anyone who finds heavy hedge shears tiring, there is no need to trim the entire plant in one movement. Work in 4 small sections. Trim one side, move around the plant, then continue. If your lavender is in a container, simply rotate the pot instead of repeatedly bending or reaching across it. Now, if you have an old lavender that has become very woody, split in the center, and carries only a fringe of green growth around the outside, do not try to rescue it with a severe September cut. Take several healthy tip cuttings instead. Root them in small pots and use them as replacements next year. Starting again with a young plant is often easier than trying to force an old woody lavender back into a compact shape. And if your lavender is still flowering strongly in a warm climate, keep the treatment even lighter. Remove only the finished flower stems and leave the foliage alone. The rule is simple. Keep the green cushion. Never chase it down into the old woody skeleton. Saf. Rambling and climbing roses. Remove the old canes. Train the future flowers. Now we move from a compact lavender mound to something much larger, rambling and climbing roses. This section is not about every rose in the garden. We are talking about the long, flexible roses that climb over fences, garden arches, shed walls, pergolas, and trellises. Many rambling roses flower once in early summer, and those flowers appear on growth produced the previous year. That is why September can be useful. Start with the simplest job first. Remove anything dead, damaged, or diseased. Do not skim only across the outside of the plant. Look deeper into the framework, because old dead canes often become trapped inside the tangle where air movement is poor. Then identify the oldest canes. They are usually thicker, darker, more gray-brown, and rougher than the fresh green stems. For an established rambler, remove selected old canes right back at the base rather than shortening every branch across the top. Taking out roughly 1 in 3 of the oldest canes can reduce congestion and make room for stronger young growth. Those younger canes are important. They are the framework that can carry future flowers. Once the old growth is removed, turn your attention to the healthy new canes. Instead of allowing all of them to grow straight upward, spread them across the fence, trellis, or wall as horizontally as the structure allows. This changes more than appearance. A cane trained horizontally can produce flowering shoots along much more of its length. A cane left completely vertical often concentrates flowers toward the top. For a small garden, this is especially useful. You can create a wide curtain of flowers at eye level instead of having blooms disappear above a fence where they are difficult to see from your patio chair or kitchen window. Secure the canes with soft plant ties and leave a little slack. The stems will become thicker as they mature, and a tie that is too tight can cut into the cane later. If you are dealing with a large, thorny rambler, work carefully. Wear long gloves that protect the wrists and forearms. When removing an old cane that is woven through the plant, cut it into 2 or 3 manageable sections instead of trying to pull the entire length out at once. And in a narrow side yard or small seating area, deal with the practical problems first. Remove or redirect canes that cross a doorway, catch clothing, lean over a chair, or block a frequently used path. The goal is not simply to make the rows smaller. Use September to make its structure cleaner, safer, and better prepared to carry flowers where you can actually enjoy them next season. C. Clematis. First identify when it blooms, then decide whether to touch it. Before you make a single cut on a clematis in September, ask one question. When did it flower? That answer matters more than how untidy the vine looks. Clematis are usually divided into 3 pruning groups, and treating the wrong group at the wrong time can remove next year's flowers. The first group blooms in early spring. These are the vigorous clematis that can cover a fence, pergola, or small garden structure with flowers in April or May. They bloom on growth produced the previous year. If yours belongs to this group, leave it largely alone in September. Its next crop of flower buds may already be forming on the stems in front of you. If it has become too large, the better time for major pruning was immediately after flowering. The second group includes many of the large flowered clematis that bloom in early summer and sometimes produce a lighter second display later. These can receive a very light tidy. Remove faded flowers and cut back only a short distance to a strong pair of healthy buds. You are not reshaping the entire vine. You are simply cleaning it up. The third group flowers, later in summer on new growth. These varieties eventually tolerate a much harder cut, but September is not the time to do it. Save that work for late winter or very early spring. For now, remove crispy foliage, broken stems, and anything clearly dead. Then look at how the healthy vines are sitting on their support. Clematis often grow into one dense knot near the top of a trellis while leaving large empty areas below. In a small courtyard, patio garden, or narrow side yard, that can make the planting look heavier than it needs to. Instead of shortening healthy stems, gently spread them across unused sections of the trellis. Think about correcting the footprint rather than reducing the height. Loosen crowded stems carefully and secure them with soft ties where needed. Work slowly. Older clematis stems can be brittle, especially near the base, and they can snap surprisingly easily when pulled or twisted. There is one more September job worth remembering. Keep the root area cool. A thin layer of mulch, a low-growing companion plant, or even a nearby decorative container can help shade the soil around the base without disturbing the roots. Clematis like light on their upper growth, but their roots benefit from cooler conditions. So use this simple memory rule. Spring flower. Think before cutting. Summer flower. Tidy lightly. Late flower. Wait for winter pruning. With clematis, correct identification will always protect more flowers than an enthusiastic pair of pruners. Peonies. September is about protecting the crown, not shaping the plant. Peonies are a perfect example of why September gardening often rewards restraint. By this point in the season, the flowers are long gone, and the foliage may look tired. That can make it tempting to cut the whole plant down simply to make the border look cleaner. But if the leaves are still green, leave them. Those leaves are still working. Throughout late summer and early fall, they continue producing energy and sending it down into the thick roots below the soil. Those stored reserves help support the buds that will produce next spring's growth and flowers. So your September job is not to reshape the plant. It is to remove only what no longer helps it. Start with any remaining seed pods. Follow the old flower stem down to a healthy set of leaves and cut just above them. Removing the seed pods prevents the plant from spending unnecessary energy on seed production while keeping useful foliage in place. Next, inspect the leaves closely. Peonies can develop fungal problems late in the season. If you see badly spotted leaves, brown patches, collapsed stems, or obviously diseased growth, remove those sections. Take affected stems down close to ground level and carry the material away. Do not leave diseased foliage lying around the crown, where it can remain damp and contribute to problems the following season. Healthy green leaves, however, should stay. Wait until the foliage naturally turns yellow or brown, or until frost finishes it. Once an herbaceous peony has genuinely died back, cut the stems down close to the ground and clean away the debris. Tree peonies are different. They are woody shrubs, so never cut their permanent framework down to soil level. Remove only dead, damaged, or broken growth and leave the main structure in place. September is also a useful time to investigate a peony that has produced plenty of leaves but very few flowers for several years. Sometimes the problem is not pruning at all. The crown may simply be buried too deeply beneath soil, or layers of mulch added over time. Peony buds usually perform best when they sit only about 1 or 2 inches below the soil surface. If a mature clump truly needs dividing or repositioning, early fall can be a suitable time in many climates. But do not lift a heavy established plant unless there is a real reason. For anyone working in a small yard, narrow border, or compact cottage-style garden, one healthy peony in the right place is far better than turning September into a difficult digging project. Remember the rule. Green peony leaves are still feeding next spring's flowers. Do not switch them off early just because the garden looks ready for fall. Zix, daylilies, a 15-minute cleanup that can make a tired border look new again. Daylilies are among the most forgiving plants in a garden, which is exactly why they are often ignored until September. By now, many clumps have faded flowers, bare stalks, and brown outer leaves. In a small border beside a patio or walkway, that tired growth can make the whole space look neglected. The good news is that you do not need a major pruning job. Start with the spent flowers. Each daylily bloom lasts only 1 day. Once it fades, pinch it off, along with any developing seed pods. This is simple grooming, but it makes an immediate visual difference. Next, look at the flower stalks, often called scapes. Once every bud on a scape has opened and finished, that stalk has completed its job. Follow it down into the clump and cut it close to the crown. In many cases, a finished scape can also be removed with a firm downward pull. Then move to the foliage. Daylily leaves often begin turning brown from the outside of each fan. Pull away those yellow or brown outer leaves by hand, or trim them near the base. But do not shear the entire clump flat across the top. Healthy green leaves are still feeding the roots, and removing all of them simply to create a neat shape takes away working foliage the plant still needs. For reblooming daylilies, this cleanup is especially useful. Continue removing finished stalks and keep the soil consistently moist during dry weather. Some varieties may respond with another round of flowerscapes before the season ends. If your daylily has become one dense, crowded mass and flowering has gradually declined, September can also be a reasonable time to divide it in suitable climates. Lift the clump carefully and separate it into smaller sections. Aim for pieces with around 3 or 4 healthy fans each. When dividing, trim the foliage on those divisions to roughly 6 inches. This reduces water loss while the roots establish again. Replant them at the same general depth and water thoroughly. For a narrow yard or compact border, those extra divisions can become useful design material. Instead of buying more plants, repeat the same daylily farther along a path or around another small seating area. Repeating one plant can make a small garden feel calmer and more intentional. And if you prefer to work in short sessions, use a simple 1-bucket rule. Take 1 small bucket into the garden and remove only enough dead flowers, scapes, and brown leaves to fill it. Then stop. You can return another morning if necessary. With daylilies, the goal is not a dramatic haircut. It is a careful cleanup that keeps the healthy green fans working while making the whole border look fresh again. Chill. Catmint, coreopsis, and other summer perennials. The strategic final cut. The final group is not one single plant, but a collection of summer perennials that often look tired by September. This includes catmint, coreopsis, salvia, veronica, Shasta daisies, yarrow, coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, hostas, and bearded iris. The important thing is that they should not all receive the same treatment. Start with plants that may respond well to a light trim. Coreopsis is a good example. If the first heavy flush of flowers has faded and the plant still has healthy green growth, lightly reduce it by about 1/3. In a mild climate, this can refresh the shape and sometimes encourage another smaller round of flowers. Catmint can be treated in a similar way. When the mound becomes floppy and opens in the center, a light trim can help it form a neater shape again. Perennial salvia, veronica, Shasta daisies, and yarrow can also benefit from having finished flower stems removed down to healthy foliage. But timing matters. If your first frost is approaching quickly, do not keep cutting simply because you want fresh growth. At that point, the goal changes from encouraging another performance to preparing the plant for colder weather. And some plants are better left standing. Coneflowers and black-eyed Susans produce seed heads that birds can feed on through fall and winter. Their dark stems and seed heads also add height and structure when the rest of a small garden begins to look empty. That can be especially useful in a narrow border, patio garden, or small backyard where removing everything at once leaves the space flat and bare for months. Some hollow perennial stems can also provide shelter for overwintering beneficial insects. So a perfectly shaved garden is not always a healthier or more attractive one. Think of your September border in 3 simple zones. Cut now. These are finished flowers, or floppy plants, that respond well to a light trim. Tidy only. Remove dead, damaged, yellow, or diseased material while keeping healthy foliage. Leave for winter. Keep selected seed heads and stems that provide food, shelter, or winter structure. Hostas belong mostly in the tidy category. Remove finished flower stalks and badly yellowed or damaged leaves, but leave healthy foliage until frost collapses it naturally. Bearded iris should also be handled selectively. Remove finished flower stalks and any spotted or diseased leaves, but keep the healthy green fans standing. This final section may look less dramatic than cutting everything to the ground. But that is exactly the point. September cleanup should bring order to the garden without removing every useful stem, every working leaf, and every seed head that still has a purpose. Conclusion: prune less, protect more, enjoy more next spring. If there is one lesson to carry with you after today, it is this. September pruning is editing, not demolition. Hydrangeas teach us restraint. Lavender teaches us where to stop. Climbing roses teach us to remove old wood and guide new growth with purpose. Clematis reminds us that knowing when a plant flowers matters more than how untidy it looks. Peonies reward patience. Daylilies respond beautifully to selective cleanup. And summer perennials show us that sometimes the best decision is to leave a few stems and seed heads standing. You do not need to finish your entire garden in one afternoon. If you are working with a small patio, narrow side yard, balcony containers, a modest flower bed outside your bedroom window, or a quiet corner near your home office, start with the plant closest to your door. Make 5 or 10 correct cuts. Remove 1 bucket of tired growth. Then put the pruners down. For those of us who prefer simple tools, natural materials, manageable projects, and a garden that looks beautiful without demanding every weekend, that slower approach is often the better one. What looks like a tiny September job can make a surprisingly big difference 9 months from now. The hydrangea buds you protect today may become next summer's flowers. The young rose cane you train across a trellis may become a wall of color. And the healthy green foliage you decide not to cut may be quietly storing the energy your garden needs for spring. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 7 plants are growing in your garden right now? And have you ever had a hydrangea that produced plenty of leaves but almost no flowers? Or a lavender plant that became woody in the center? Tell me in the comments below. Your experience may help another Dream Room viewer facing the same problem. And if you enjoy practical ideas for decorating, arranging, and improving small homes, patios, balconies, and gardens without complicated tools or expensive materials, Dream Room. And follow the channel. There is always another small change that can make your space easier to care for and much more enjoyable to live in.